Hi, I am Michael Bean. I'm a professional acting teacher. I've been acting for teaching acting for almost 20 years, and this is your free acting class for myfreeactingclass.com for Monday, June the 21st. Just a reminder that we will be taking a hiatus from this class for July and August. So this is the last week of the regular class. And what I recommend is that you check myfreeactingclass.com because although I do not have it updated yet, by the time I am teaching Wednesday's class, here at the bottom of this page, myfreeactingclass.com, I will have a sign. Oh, dang it. I will have a sign up for the newsletter. So instead of this, here's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, there's going to be something that says sign up for the newsletter, and that's what we're going to shift to starting in September. It'll be so that'll give us the freedom to play with different days and different times. There's folks, like Candy, who are always like needing to sign in while they're like driving to and from work, and the initially doing weekday afternoons made perfect sense when everybody was in a like global lockdown. But now it's going to be less of that. And so I want to make sure that folks can still come to classes. So today I am subbing for Leanne Lapp, and my intention for today is to do a straight up Ask Me Anything. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing the self-tape review. So if you have not yet sent a self-tape for this week, please do. If the self-tape reviews, basically if I still get self-tapes over the next couple of months, then what I will do is I will use that newsletter to say, okay, I've got enough self-tapes to do one of these. Like everybody who wants to like show up this day, this time, and we'll just sort of do a pop-up self-tape review so that I'm still, giving you some backup and you're still getting the practice over the summertime. I just can't commit to doing it, every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, for those couple of months. But I still want to do them. So for those of you who are just watching this video and you're like, incidentally, this is me giving you all time to think of what questions you want to ask. So if today doesn't ask me anything, I need you to ask me things, or else, it's just going to be me talking to me. For those of you who are like self-tape review, what is that? All you would have to do is go on to myfreeactingclass.com and you would find this link, info@myfreeactingclass.com. Email your self-tape. So email a link to the YouTube, where you've put it up on YouTube. Email us the actual file if you can have the skills to get it small enough. We transfer it to this email address. I will watch those tapes. I will give you notes, and we'll look at them in lesson so that everybody else can learn from your explorations as well. Incidentally, I heard from Ben Cockell just this week. If anybody is watching the Mysterious Benedict Society, Ben came on as and showed us the self-tape that he used to book his guest star role, like sort of the largest role that he had had to date at that point. And maybe 6 months ago, he came in and we watched that self-tape and he talked about it and he talked about his experience on set. And those episodes are airing, I think, in just a little over a week on July 2nd. Is his first like big episode. So that's Ben Cockell, and it's the Mysterious Benedict Society for anybody who's interested in or following that show. But then once it's aired, he's going to come back and do what I'm excited about for my free acting class first, which is that we're going to show the clips of the character from the show, and then and show them side by side, and then I'll show the tape from the audition so you can really see the difference. Because that's what I want. I just want to like peel back the curtain and show everybody self-tapes do not have to be perfect. The reason that when you tape something at home it does not look like it does on television is because this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and once you're on set there's literally like 100 people who's taking the different parts of the job of making it look fabulous and be fabulous. So it'll be fun to watch watch those self-tapes again, and then to watch Ben's actual work and pull it apart a little bit. So I'm at your disposal. We got some My Free Acting Class regulars. What do you have questions about? What would you like me to talk about today? Crickets, 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 crickets.
If I'm gonna if I'm gonna do a self tape,
Okay, well, I suppose it could be the shortest ever lesson. The reminder for the three of you that we're going to be moving to a different format and all that. Um, maybe this is a perfect reason to take a couple of months off. If you're like, yeah, we have no questions. You've talked to us so much that we can't think of anything to ask you. Uh, yeah, you want to jump in, or Anthony? Yeah, please. What do you got?
if I do a self tape, right? But I don't got like any monologues
You can
or
put it in the chat
slides to
window,
do.
Anthony, if you're having the difficulty with your system. Oh, I see what's happening. Sorry about that, folks. Anthony, I had my speaker setting, at the wrong setting. So if you were talking, I did not hear you. I'm sorry about that. Would you ask me a question again, please?
Oh, I'm gonna like if I'm gonna do a self tape, but I don't got like any monologues or sides to do it with. How do I find it where it's like three lines where I could just practice like with different characters, like with me being a character like where I'm a cop or a prisoner or like a superhero. Like how do I find them characters?
Great question. Do you remember last Wednesday when I went through the course pack that has a bunch of characters, in it? So right now, if you go to myfreeactingclass.com, you will find some uh, the practice scripts, so you can download those and use them for the self-tape. But if you really wanted a cop or a prisoner or a superhero, literally you just go on Google and type film and TV scripts, and there are hundreds of websites. Basically, you can find scripts for any TV show you want. Now, what I would recommend is that you target a specific show and you're like, yeah, this is the superhero show I like, or this is the superhero character I like, and do that. And if that would be fun for you to do that, oh my God, it's just not going to hurt you to practice with that. As long as you know there is no way right now that you are going to audition for a cop. Right. So my strong recommendation is that you target specifically shows that have actors that are around your age. The like right now you just aren't old enough, to go out for these cop roles. So even if you're like, yeah, I want to be a cop or a prisoner, like, okay, but should be a prisoner in a juvenile detention facility then, because that's how you come across on camera is as a teenager. That's my advice. But really, practice with anything you want. Candy has done all sorts of stuff in the last couple of months, and she's just like, well, this is just what delights me. That's exactly the way I recommend that you approach your practice. You're like, does it delight you? Cool. Put it on camera. It'll give you a good chance to practice skills. It'll keep you in the game. Also, Anthony, if you go to the YouTube channel, which if you're like, oh my gosh, how do I find that? Well, I'm so glad you asked, because I updated this just recently. And if you go to myfreeactingclass.com, you click on the video archive, you go right here, boom, it'll take you to our YouTube channel. And on here, you will find, now I suspect that it's not gonna let me search just these videos, is it? If we scroll back far enough, then what you will find is, there, maybe that one. Practice. Self-tape review, practice, how to find the right practice script for film and TV. Oh my gosh, there it is. That's so great. Thank you, Michael Bean. That's a great idea. So, junk. Stop the chair. Stop that video. And Anthony, I'll throw that into the chat window right now. So I actually also did run an entire lesson on how to find a practice script. Oh, there it is. Practice script. And so there I went over some websites that you can go to find information. Eve, could you please talk about substitution and imagination and how they're different or similar? Apologies if these are outdated terms, but I have heard briefly about them. Okay, so one of my favorite quotes, that I feel is really relevant here, Eve, is from an acting teacher named Bobby Lewis, who's one of the first guys. He was in the group theater in the late 40s. He was along with like Lee Strasberg and Stella Adler and Sanford Meisner and some of these folks who sort of went on to be like giants of acting. And Bobby Lewis, just didn't like write a book or start his own TM, but it was in a discussion about objective, and the Bobby Lewis quote is like, I don't care if you call it objective, you can call it spaghetti. Like, I just care that you do it. So I think don't get sucked into a war of acting teachers who are convinced that, a substitution is this and imagination is that, and, personalization is this. Like, just don't get sucked into that battle. That I think that I'll tell you what the distinctions are for me, and then know that, like a lot of things that sort of are not in any way standardized. I mean, acting is art, right? You just can't expect it to be the same thing for people in all places. Does that make sense? So the imagination, is the to, like, let's say you've got a scene where you've got to get very angry at someone. Right? Imagination, is I'm going to imagine myself either into the story or into a situation that makes me very angry. It's like, so sometimes actors will call that a what if or an as if. So it's like, oh, it's like I walk into my bedroom, and my little brother, has like smashed my stuff. Even if the scene is about sort of you and your best friend, there's that, you're like, okay, I'm gonna imagine myself into a situation that does that for me. Right now, this is something that hasn't actually happened, but but I'm going to imagine that it did. And then, or maybe, I'm using my imagination just to deeply engage in the script. And I'm reading the script about a girl and her best friend, and I'm like, and just by engaging with it and kind of fleshing out the details and going, oh, and like, just last week, everything was so great, and like we swore that we'd keep each other's secrets, and like this, and so then today when I get to school and she's told everybody my secrets, like, of course that enrages me because this was my person, and like now I feel deeply betrayed, and right, so I'm imagining myself into the story, not sort of taking something of my own life and putting it on the story. Does that make sense? Right, so imagination as if, what if, that's sort of that, for me, that category of things. A substitution is depending on how narrowly an acting teacher defines it. A substitution, is either, okay, in the scene, I'm mad at my best friend, so I've got to think of a time when I was mad at my best friend. Right? Like, what's the, like, even if I didn't get a chance to express it out loud, what is something that my actual best friend did at one time that it just enraged me? That's a very narrow definition of substitution, but that is the way some people use it. They're like, when have you had that experience? Bring that experience here. Substitution is also often used for when have you had that experience of being extremely angry? Bring that here. Right, so you're like, oh, well, like, I haven't had that experience of like feeling deeply betrayed, by a best friend, and I haven't had that with my kid brother, but I have had it, but I have had that with my dog, where like I came in and my dog had like eaten my favorite shoes, and I was just like, how dare you, and I was like full of rage, and it's like, and then I'm good, I'm gonna bring that. to the scene. So, you're doing the scene with Candy, and you just look at Candy and you remember the chewed up shoes and like how bad you just wanted to like hit this poor defenseless dog. And then you just like start throwing lines, at Candy. Right. So that would be a substitution. Basically what is an experience of your life that had that feeling in it as strongly as possible. Now, usually when I talk about that, I'll call it a personalization, because the uh, because for me, substitution is like I'm revisiting my own history as opposed to I'm finding it here. Like, I think that it's still important if you're doing that scene to find it with Candy, but really, who cares what you call it? Like, the point is, what helps you empathize with the feeling behind the experience? What helps you go like, okay, yeah, it's either I'm imagining it, I'm finding it in the script, or I'm finding it in my life, but it makes sense to me, this big feeling, and I'm going to bring it to the story. Does that help, understand that a little bit better? Okay, great. Because I know acting teachers start like throw these words around, and one of the things that I think is like, it's at the beginning, there's so much uncertainty. There's just so much uncertainty. Like, and in an art form, of course there's uncertainty. There literally is no one best way to do this thing. But when you start, it's very tempting to look for the one best way to do it. Right? To be like, well, but like somebody's got to be sure. And what you're really saying is like, please, somebody take this unsureness away from me. And people will happily take your money in order to and look you in the eye and say, I'm totally sure. You don't have to be unsure. But guess what? It's art. And I'm sorry, uncertainty's part of the game. That's just the way it works. And I think that that when work loses the uncertainty, it loses the vulnerability. That it flattens out. Right? That the best work is still alive. It has um, that sort of social work definition of vulnerability, which is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Right? Just this is why I'm a Brene Brown fan. Is that I hear her talking and I'm like, acting. This is so incredibly relevant to acting, but you have actual science and not just a whole bunch of acting teachers warring with each other over their opinion about this. It's also the problem, I think, with asking professional actors. The right, it's a little bit like I don't know, it's a little bit like Google searching something and then looking only at the very first thing that comes up and being like, that is definitely the truth. Is that everybody will form a story based on their experience, and the more successful somebody is, the more likely they are to have a very internally consistent story that puts them at the center of it. And those stories, unless that person has experience teaching or facilitating, or just has a sort of more curious approach to things, which of course lots of us do. I mean, you're here, I'm here, but then lots of those folks are going to be like, well, this is the way it works. Here's the way to do it. Like, this is what you got to do. Wish I'd known this at the beginning, because this is the way it works. This is what you have to do. And how many folks have enough broad exposure to have seen a whole bunch of those different paths to the goal, and make sweeping conclusions about them. I think that for every person who is utterly convinced, that the way to do it is, that you can go and find a counterexample. And so hopefully that helps anchor you in, oh, right, like I get to choose. And my ideal situation, I think, for class is that students walk away thinking that they are great, where you find your own conviction. You're like, yeah, I found my way to do this thing, as opposed to like, oh my God, Michael Bean's way, or like Bobby Lewis's way. Magical. That's just what I like. Where are we? The Stella Adler's book, The Art of Acting. Yeah, great. the classic, very detailed, and since we're talking books anyway, um, the let's go Larry Moss, The Power of the Actor. No, what's that? Larry Moss is The Intent to Live. The Intent to Live, and Ivana Chubbuck, The Power of the Actor. And then if you want something that's like really different, but because this guy comes from an English approach, and I haven't had a chance to talk about this in lessons yet. It's just on my like list of things that like eventually I should probably get to. It's Patrick Tucker, Secrets of Screen Acting. And so Larry Moss, and Stella Adler are going to be very much about like story, like understand the story, like go deep into it, and then like do justice to the writer, like details. Ivana Chubbuck is going to be like feelings, like just rip your guts out and spill them into the story, and that's how you do this. And then Patrick Tucker is like, feelings are dumb. Don't feel anything. Just get really, really good at manipulating the camera. And so I read it and I found it fascinating. He has this sort of English, dry English approach where he's like, Americans are so terribly indulgent. They always want to feel things. Like, who cares if you feel things? Like, are you telling the story or not? And so just if you're looking for something that's like a fun counterpoint, I'd recommend it if you can hunt down a copy. And I'll add that to my list of things to spend some time on when we come back. It's a good reminder for me. Oh yeah, I was going to do that. Anybody else have a question for me in the last couple of minutes of Monday? I will be back tomorrow with self-tapes to show you. Candy, please.
Question. We may have done a lesson in the past, but like if I'm going to be looking for an agent, what types of things should I be looking for? Or because there are agents in Arizona and I'm looking, and yeah, just wondered what I should be looking for. And then what questions maybe to be asking them. Like if it's right, because there's multiple, so I can check out different ones.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of interview, what types of questions should I be?
Of course, yeah. So this is great. Like, I can't believe that it took until now for me to know how to search my own videos, on YouTube. And you've got to see me discover that live. But this is how to get a talent agent. Is that lesson? And then this is the talent agent, Marina O'Shea.
Was she the one in England?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I do remember part of that one, so that'd be cool.
And then this is talent agent Candace Fulton. So there are 3 of the previous lessons, and for anybody who can't see the chat because you're watching this on YouTube, all you got to do is go to YouTube, follow that link from myfreeactingclass.com. There's a little teeny search icon. You saw me find it. And you can search the videos. I just put in the word talent agent. They popped up. So what I would recommend looking at is so in terms of search terms, Candy, I would say look at something like Screen Actors Guild, licensed talent agencies, Arizona. Right? Because searching in Canada, for instance, like just recently I had somebody ask me about talent agents in Alberta. And so I hopped on Google and I searched for talent agents because I think it's not that folks can't search on Google. It's just that like if you know what search terms to use, it can take you 30 seconds. And if you don't, then it can take you hours and hours and hours. You can still find nothing. Right? So there probably are sort of like somewhere there's going to be a list of legit Arizona talent agents as opposed to just the folks who say they're talent agents, right? There might be folks who are like modeling agents, or they like, rep people for, print ads in commercials, or, they who say that they're talent agents or have that on their website, but really you look and they're like, and they cover everything, or they have no information, you got to ask them. And, so for instance, the Association of Canadian Television and Radio Artists, or ACTRA, ACTRA Alberta, on their website had a list of these are the talent agents in Calgary, these are the talent agents in Edmonton. And so that's a qualified referral. So looking in BC, they have to be provincially registered. So there's a whole list of like, these are all the talent agents that are registered in the province of British Columbia. And it's not perfect, but it does kind of like help we weed through the chaff and sort of figure out who's legit and not. And then when you talk to people, or if you get a chance to actually talk to people, then finding out either from their website or from that conversation, how many people do you represent? Do you represent folks for commercials? Do you represent folks for film and TV, which is often called principal or theatrical casting? But again, if somebody gives you attitude and they're like, "Do you mean principal?" then like probably they're a jerk and you don't want to be rep by them anyway. You know what I'm saying? Right, it kind of gets back to what Eve was asking. That if somebody's really hung up on like, I know exactly the right words and that makes me better than you. I don't think that definitely, I don't think that's something people consciously do, but I think is a way they deal with the uncertainty as they approach it with a subtext like, how can you not know this thing? And you're like, because I'm new and I'm curious and I'm allowed. And you might just have to like do the permission part for yourself, especially in the US where people are not quite as like gentle and polite as you could expect them to be in Canada. Right, like hopefully there's some of them out there, but I'm curious to hear about your experience with Arizona talent agents. Likely you're going to find folks mostly who are repping for commercials and print, just because there's likely to be more local stuff where they need local actors, basically where the budget is such they're making a commercial that's sort of just for the area that you're in, or for the state, and they don't want to bother hiring out of state actors and bringing them across the border, and that's going to cost them 3 times as much money, that kind of thing. Yeah.
So I had another question about student films. If I'm searching for those to get some experience, like I don't necessarily need an agent for those, would I?
No, 100% not.
Okay.
No,
and then I guess what would it be like? Because I don't know. I've never done it, so.
That is the very best reason to go and do one.
Okay, to just go see and just
Yeah,
do it.
yeah, because again, some student films will be like somebody, and their video camera, like filming you in a public park, and some will be like a dolly and like a $50,000 camera and a crew of 12, and there's kind of no way of predicting one way or the other until you get there. Like, I mean, obviously if they are going, if they're attached to a film school, at a larger, more legitimate program, somewhere, then the quality is likely to be higher. That's that's one of the reasons I recommend you doing student films, is so that you get experience waiting while they set up the lighting, and like feeling what it's really like on set. I would say, regardless of the size of the crew, etc., just expect that it will take a lot of time, and that large parts of it you will be doing nothing. And so because basically, especially setting up lighting and setting up shots, takes a long time to do well. Right, there's a reason that the film crew is so large. It's because doing those things like requires a lot of person hours, and if the crew is large enough, then they can do it pretty quick. But if it's 10 people who are doing it for the first time or the second time or the third time, it might really take them some time. And when that happens, you will have the option to either check out, and like play video games on your phone, or to like look over the shoulder of these bored film students who are also waiting and go like, what is that? What do you mean when you say 25 mil and a 35 mil? Like what's that lens versus that lens look like? How does it see differently? Like why do you do that thing with the wedges and the track? Like this what does dolly mean? What does pan mean? Like these words people are tossing around, what do they mean? Like, and if you've got 10 hours in a student film while they're setting up for your like single shot where you say 4 lines, like there's an opportunity to see that as like, sweet, you know, I'm a curious question asker, and these people are at my disposal for 10 hours. And so if you approach it that way, then you can often use student films as an opportunity to educate yourself. And just don't count on getting usable footage either. Like probably most student films, or at least in my experience, most of the student films I did, especially at the beginning, were so terrible that I would never, ever show my clips in them to anyone. And that's kind of my deal, right? Like if you go on to have a professional career, do you really want your first ever student films like showing up on YouTube somewhere where people can search your name? Probably not. Like I'm pretty happy that those early Vancouver Film School, student films, that featured me doing God knows what sort of weird stuff, disappeared. And probably a lot of the people who made them went on to have really successful professional careers, like in the same way that actors are just figuring it out by doing it. That's what film students are doing. So, great question.
Thank you so much. That was awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, really helpful.
Tomorrow we will be back with self-tape review, and Wednesday we will be looking at story and doing a little wrap up. So I hope you can join us then. Bye.